Hello and welcome. I'm Quinn. I'm a coach at Major League Hacking. I'm really excited to be here for this stream because actually, I won't be doing the stream. I'm excited to say that we'll be joined by an active member of the hacker community here at MLH. This is the infamous 404, also known as Yash. Yash is returning after streaming last Global Hack Week. This is going to be a really exciting stream on building a web scraper in Python, but you don't want to listen to me. You want to hear Yash, so I'm going to give you what you want. Welcome, Yash.
Hello. Hi, Quinn. Thanks for having me here. I'm really excited for the stream.
Awesome stuff. So before we get started, I just want to shout out that if you haven't checked in already, the link is in the chat. If you scroll up a little bit, I've also just popped it up on screen. I'll resend that in a moment. But yeah, I'm going to let Yash take it away. I'll be here if there are any questions as well. And I hope you all enjoy. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Quinn. I'll still introduce myself. Hi, I'm Yash. I'm joining in here from India. Type in the chat where you are joining in from. You might have seen me before in the other GHW streams. I go by the name of 44 Not Found. And I've been having just a lot of fun this GHW. I've been able to attend a lot of different streams and have just learn a lot. So what streams have you been joining in? I'd love to know. Okay, we have someone joining in from Jordan, um, Road Rodwan, I think. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I think they're joining in from Jordan. It's amazing to know you, see that. Awesome. Amari says, what? It is D404? Ray says they are joining in from behind me. Okay. Oh God, I do see Ray. Okay, so we have a lot of people joining in. So there's Delhi, New York City. Awesome. Yeah, great to see that. So today we're going to be building a web scraper with Python. Um, and before we begin the entire thing, right? I want you to do two things. So I want you to firstly have Python installed and have a VS Code installed. So if you have Python and VS Code installed, please let me know. Or if you don't have Python or VS Code installed, please let me know, and we can go ahead and talk about how you can install Python and VS Code. I see Maybe Wavy. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Say that this is your first event. I'm really happy that you have decided to join this event. Thank you so much. Right. So we're going to be needing two things: Python in your in development environment, and the second thing is VS Code. I recommend VS Code, but you can use any other IDE, any Vim fans, any Emacs fans, Nano, whatever you want to use. You're free to use that. So let me know in the chat if we're all good to go. So, okay, I see a lot of messages saying we are all set. Awesome. So let's dive right into it. So firstly, let's talk a bit about what exactly is web scraping. So web scraping is like the process of extracting data from the different websites, from websites. I like to think of web scraping as building tiny little helper bots that does all the browsing for you, and it collects all of the data for you, and then you can use this data that bots collected on your own or for you. So an example of this would be, say, for example, I'm traveling to some place, right? Um, as part, so just a quick interlude. Zainab asks if PyCharm is okay. Absolutely, you can use whatever IDE. I think PyCharm works great with Python. I would definitely recommend using PyCharm. So, I like, say, for example, if you're traveling somewhere, right, and there's a plane, and you want to keep checking whether or not your plane is delayed or not, whether or not your flight is delayed. So you could maybe build a web scraper bot that goes on to that website where the flight details are, and it can check for you whether or not the flight is delayed or not. And if it is delayed, then it can notify you, hey, your flight is delayed, maybe go late by this bit. And that can save you time, and you don't have to sit there on the website and sort of check it every single time yourself, right? You've automated that. So web scraping is really useful that way. Generally, web scraping is has many use cases, some of which are collecting large scale data for analysis. Let's say you're looking at GHWs, right? And you're collecting all of the past streams that have happened in GHW. Then you can go on to YouTube where there's the whole data. And you can go ahead and sort of copy and paste every single title into a spreadsheet. That is something that you can do. But there's like hundreds of GHW streams that have happened. So you could build a web scraping bot that could go on YouTube and it could scrape every single one of that data for you. And that would be much easier to do rather than doing everything by hand. The second thing is powering apps with live information. So we just talked about that in this plain demonstration, plain example that we gave. But stuff like weather, like travel details, news, this keeps changing over and over, right? And you can use web scrapers to get this updated information from wherever on the web that the information is available. And then you can notify yourself or you can make other websites based on the information, the data that you're scraping from the web. That's something that you can do. And you can automate boring tasks. This sort of covers, we have sort of covered this in the past 2 points, but you can always do the classic programmer route of like taking 3 hours to automate something that could have been done in 30 minutes by hand. But you could always do that programmer part, classic programmer part as always. So now I turn to you. Okay. Analogy time. Give me a cool analogy. What do you think is a cool analogy for web scraping? What is your understanding of web scraping? Or you could just give me a time that you worked with some web scraping libraries or an implementation before. So I'd love to hear from you. I'll give a minute or so because I know there's a delay. But I'd love to hear from you. What do you think about web scraping? What first comes into your mind when you think about web scraping? Have you had any experience with it before? I'd love to hear that. AI models use it? Maybe Wavy says AI models use it. Absolutely, you are right. Um, yes, we can. AI models often use data that is collected from scraping the web, and then we train our AI models on that data. So you're absolutely right in saying that. Binny says, telling little bros to do some task for you. Yes, that is a very hilarious example. I love it. Yeah, you sort of tell your younger sibling to do some tasks for you. That is exactly what web scraping is. Although you need to be a bit I do love that example a lot because just like little in this case, right? If you don't tell the little siblings exactly what to do, they sometimes do very silly things, and that messes up the entire operation that you wanted them to do. So that is a very good analogy. I love that. Ray says it's like scrapbooking. Ooh, I'm not entirely familiar with scrapbooking. Could you um, could you tell a bit about what scrapbooking is, Ray? Off the wall says it can help AI models search for information online. Yes, absolutely right. Um, yeah, awesome. Then we have a few folks talking about how they've used web scraping before. Yeah, awesome. I love to see that. Great. So keep them coming in the chat. I love to see them. So till the time when everyone's typing that out, let me talk about some of the challenges that you might face while web scraping. So the first challenge that you face is a technical challenge, and that is data on the internet is generally really unstructured. It's not consistent. It's all over the place. And our job with web scraping is to be able to build a bot, a scraper that is smart enough to structure that unstructured data. Or rather, instead of smart, I would use the word specific enough to structure this unstructured data that we have. We also run into a few legal challenges which aren't of I haven't seen them covered as often. And the first of which is it is entirely legal to scrape only publicly available data. So you generally should not be scraping data that is not publicly available. As long as it's publicly available, it's fine. But if it's some sort of a authorized login system and you're scraping the data from there, then that's a legal gray area. I would recommend I would advise against doing that. There's also terms of services. So many websites like Amazon, and I learned this the hard way, but Amazon absolutely says in the terms of service that they forbid bots and scrapers on their website. So read the terms of service violations. If you don't, then your account might get banned and you can run into a lot of issues with the website. So definitely read the terms of service before running your scraper on any website. And then thirdly, using proxies and IP changes to circumvent barriers and rate limits, that is also a big no-no. You should generally steer clear of doing that thing. If there are any barriers or rate limits, please just adhere to those barriers put into place. So a rule of thumb, if you're unsure of whether or not you can web scrape on any website, I would definitely recommend directly contacting the owner of the website or whoever manages it. They're very forthcoming. In my experience, they've been very forthcoming, and they generally like help you out a lot about whether or not you can scrape data on the site. So, okay, I'll quickly catch up on chat. Ray says cut up magazines and paste onto your notebook. Okay, I get it now. Yes, absolutely. Radioactive says getting data from large sites automatically instead of doing it manually. Yes, that is absolutely right. You've nailed it. Then Beeb 5K says robots.txt. Yes, so this is a cool thing that Beeb has mentioned. Thank you for mentioning it. So some websites have a robots.txt. Most all of the websites have robots.txt, which is a page that talks about whether on what pages are crawlers or web scrapers allowed and on what pages are they not allowed. In fact, if I take this chance to go on google.com/robots.txt, you'll be able to see all of the pages which Google itself allows and disallows for crawlers and robots to visit. So this is definitely something that you should look at before scraping off of any website. Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Awesome. So let's continue with our challenges. Okay. So these are some of the challenges that we run into with making a web scraper. Awesome. So with that being said, let's dive right into the meat of today's stream, which would be building a web scraper in Python. So before we begin, are there any questions? Rhythm asks how to bypass bot restrictions if the website blocks. Rhythm, I would generally advise you not to try and bypass bot restrictions. If there are bot restrictions in place, that generally means that the website does not allow web scraping. And so you should not be attempting to scrape on that particular website. So yeah, captcha stuff like captchas and especially rate limits and using proxies. That's just not something that you should be attempting. Hopefully that answers your question. And with that being said, we are going to jump into today's building the web scraper. So what I have for you is a website that I've created, which we are going to be scraping today. And I'll quickly post the document which has all of the websites and the links that you'll need in the chat. Okay. I can't seem to. Thank you so much, Quinn. So Quinn's got that. So I have made a document, and I absolutely stole this from Varshini, who's an amazing streamer. They do this. They make all of the commands and the links that they've been using, and they put that in a big document. And I love that. So shout out to Varshini, who didn't give me the idea. I absolutely stole it from them. If you've been to any of their streams, you'll know how awesome they are. So with that being said, you'll see that we have this pizza site 6.versal.app, and that is the site that we're going to be scraping off of. These are some of the most cursed pizza combinations that I was able to find from a food API. So this has stuff like stuff like eggplant pizza, stuff like zucchini pizza boards. And if you do like that sort of stuff, it's good, great. But I do think these combinations are pretty unconventional, to say the least. So we're going to be scraping this website for recipes. I've created this website, so we are not going to run into any challenges. And this is a pretty simple website. It only has one home page, and it has a recipes page, which has all of the recipes like pizza bites with pumpkin and pepperoni pizza muffins. How do you call a muffin a pizza? But yeah, so there are a bunch of unconventional pizza recipes that I was able to find. And what we are going to be doing is we essentially want to scrape the data and information of every single one of these recipes that you can see. So say, for example, I go to this very first recipe that you can see over here, and I click on view recipe. Well, then we can see the title, the image, we can see health score, how many people does it serve, how many likes does it have, the ingredients, instructions, price, health score again, and the link to the original recipe. So you can click on this to get the link to the original recipe. So it's loading. Okay, we'll let it load in the background. But this is the recipe page of how you can create um, delicious pizza recipes. And what we are going to be doing is we're going to be building a Python web scraper that can get all of this information and store it in our VS Code. So hopefully this makes sense. Are there any questions about what we are going to be doing? If I went a bit quickly, feel this is the perfect time to jump in, ask me to clarify on what on anything that you might have want to know. If not, if everything's great, then just drop any emoji in the chat and I'll know that we are all good to continue. Okay, there's an emoji. Awesome. Love to see that. I'll take a quick water break. Awesome. This is amazing. So I think most of us are okay. Off the wall has a question, so we'll create a Python script to gather the information from this page. Correct. Absolutely. Yes, that is exactly what we want to do. You're right. Awesome. Great. So now I'll quickly share. I think I'll have to reshare my screen. I'll quickly do that. And we're going to head on out into our VS Code where we're going to be writing our code. So this is what your VS Code probably looks like. Hopefully, this is our website. Please let me know in the chat if the page is visible. I hope it is. If my entire screen is visible. Ooh, Inception. There's a lot of screen echo. But let me know in the chat if you're good to go. You can see the screen. I will assume for now that we are good to go. Yes, absolutely. We seem to be good to go. There's a question, what browser am I using? I am using Firefox. I do really love using Firefox. And that's what I'm using. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so we're going to head on to Visual Studio Code and we're going to create a terminal over here. And in here, we're going to be using two major libraries today, right? So first things first, with Python, the best thing that I would recommend you to do is create a new virtual environment. A virtual environment is essentially a tiny little box that has all of your own dependencies. So, it's like a tiny room that you can create and store your own libraries and versions of libraries in so that it doesn't conflict with other projects that you've made. So I would definitely recommend making your own virtual environment. And the way you do that is by script, by Python -m vnv vle. This right here is the script. if you want to see where the script is, I recommend taking a look at the document that Quinn was so generous enough to share in the chat. Take a look at that. All of the commands that we're going to be using are there. Okay. So we run this command to create a new virtual environment. You'll see the folder created over here. I'll take this quick moment to set up the chat. Just give me a second. Okay, awesome. We are all good to go. So we have our VNV. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to activate this VNV. The way we're going to activate it is do VNV/scripts/activate. Now, if you're on a Mac OS or Linux, I think the command is slightly different. I think on that, the command is vnv.bin/activate. Sorry, source vnv.bin/activate. I'm not entirely sure. I've not used Mac before. So if you are running into an error, if you're on Mac and you're running into an error with installing like activate in your environment, please let me know and I'll be happy to debug it for you. Okay. So I'll quickly take a look at chat to see if we are all good. Explore bar on the right. Road one says, can you share why do you do that? Oh, okay, I do. I love this question. So let's take a look at why do I do this. So if I create a new, let's say an HTML page, right? It does that HTML. I can't spell. Okay, HTML. Okay, and then I create a doc type HTML. Right. So if I have this bar on the left, then when I close and open the file explorer, the code over here, it shifts from left to right, left to right, left to right, and that's sort of distracting when you're coding. So having this primary bar on the right side, when you do open and close this, you'll see that this does not run into like it does not move left to right. So that's very much useful when programming. It's very pleasing to the eye. So I highly recommend having your sidebar on the right. Vinny was very kind enough to have given the command for the Mac users. Thank you so much. Maybe Vivi says, I am getting a PS security exception. Okay, so the thing is, off the start, Microsoft doesn't really allow you to make like run scripts on your machine. So I would recommend. So there is. I just saw this a few seconds ago because I had to do that. So I would recommend going on to this and running this on your PowerShell. This is a command that would allow you to execute scripts on your machine. So maybe I would say start a new PowerShell as administrator and run this command, and that would allow you to do to activate the virtual environment. Hopefully that answers your question. You should probably put this in the chat. Okay. Awesome. Nat says PyCharm creates virtual environments automatically. Yes, it does. Absolutely. I haven't had a great experience with PyCharm before, but I know people who absolutely stand by it. So yeah, if you use PyCharm and that works for you, that's great. Okay. With that being said, we're going to have to move forward. If you are still running into any errors, please let me know, and we'll talk about that for sure. For now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file here, not in the virtual environment. I want to create a new file in the main folder, call it main.py, right? And now I'm going to go back to my terminal, and I'm going to install two libraries with pip. So this is pip install requests and Beautiful Soup 4. It's very important to say Beautiful Soup 4 because that's the latest version. I think Beautiful Soup's documentation itself uh, recommends using Beautiful Soup 4. So you can do that. So pip install requests and Beautiful Soup 4. And once you do that, you're good to go. both of the libraries have been installed. We're going to talk about what each of these do in a second, just now. But yeah, I'll quickly satisfy my my VS Code talking about using an interpreter. So just, yeah, there we go. Okay, I'm going to quickly look back for any questions. Maybe got it working. Awesome. Thank you. Great job. Rhythm says, can Selenium be also used instead of BS4? Yes, Selenium can also be used. Selenium is what we call a headerless browser experience. So it is a lot more powerful than Beautiful Soup is because it can interact with your browser. But also Selenium is a lot more resource intensive. So for this use case, we don't need to use Selenium. We can work with Beautiful Soup itself. Raj asks, why do we create an environment? Can you please explain it? We create an environment because an environment is essentially a containerized space. So if we create a containerized space, sorry, I wouldn't like to use containerized, but it's essentially a tiny box in which you can install specific dependencies. So say, for example, I have two products and one uses a specific version of TensorFlow and the other uses another version of TensorFlow. Well, if I want to when I try to run them, I run into an error with Python because Python has two versions of the same library installed and there's a conflict of dependency. So we sort of put all of our libraries for that project into this one tiny box and then it doesn't overflow anywhere. And by doing that, we ensure that the library doesn't conflict with another project and its libraries and the third project and its libraries. So using a virtual environment helps us from using that, from running into those issues. Roadwan says if you create an environment using Conda, you won't need an interpreter. Okay, awesome. I did not know that. I have had a few bad experiences with Conda. So I've stopped using Conda since then, but if that works, that's amazing. So firstly now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be importing the first library that we install, which is requests. Now, requests is an HTTP library. So what request does is it sends HTTP requests to any resources. Um, what is HTTP? HTTP is a protocol that you use entirely in web. The entire web works with HTTP, and you use it to access resources like HTML page, like videos, images, scripts, CSS files. Everything is done by requests. So if you've used curl, Postman, fetch in JavaScript, then yeah, those are all HTTP requests. Those all make HTTP requests. And request is a library that helps us make those requests inside of Python. So it's a very cool library and it's very awesome. I love it. And I'd highly, even after the stream, I'd highly recommend diving deep into the documentation for requests. So we have imported requests, and what we want to do is we want to get the let me go back to the main recipes page. So we want to get all of the information present on this page here, right? This is the recipe page. And we want to get all of this information here. So the way we do this is requests has a function called get. So we do requests dot get. And then you can see, as the recommendation says, we need to provide a URL. So whatever URL we provide over here is it's going to fetch that from the internet. So I'm going to just copy paste this link of the website /recipes. So I'd like you to notice what happens when we go on home. There's just a direct website, like there is no page. Then if you go on recipes, there's a /recipes page. Okay. And this is important because we're going to come back to this. For now, we're just going to copy this URL and we're going to paste it over here. So what we're doing is we're telling requests to get the resource located on this URL, which is the HTML page. And we're going to store that request. We're going to store the response that we get from that request in a variable called res. Res stands for response. So that's what we're going to do. All we've done is we've got requests. We're going to get the URL and we are storing that in res. For now, let's quickly print res and see what it returns. So the way you run Python files is you go on terminal and you do Python main.py. And when you run that, you'll see that it returns a response of 200. What does this, can someone type in the chat, what does this 200 stand for? Do you know what this 200 is for? I'll give a second for people in the chat to catch up. Let me see. Successful HTTP request. Yes, absolutely. Everyone, a lot of people got it. Yes. I see a question by True Vibes that says, where is the main.py in the file structure? The main.py is at the very top of the file structure, like the file node. So in the file tree. So there's the VNV and just besides it is the main.py. Hopefully that answers your question. And yes, to everyone who answered, HTTP 200 is indeed a success code. 200 okay means everything was great. That was awesome. You don't need to worry about it. Then there's 300s, which is for redirection. There's 400s, which means there's a client-side error. You might know 404 not found, which is generally the most wide-known error code. There's 401 unauthorized, 403 forbidden. There's a lot of error codes. So 200 essentially means that we did everything right. It was all good. Awesome. But we don't want this 200 code, right? What we really want is to access the entire information behind the 200 code. So what we're going to do is access the property of this response object, and we're going to access the text, print res.text. And this should hopefully give us the HTML that we got from our website over here. So when we run this, oh my God, we seem to have an HTML page. You'll see this is an HTML page, but this is huge. It's really hard to go through the entire thing by hand. So what I would recommend doing is instead of printing this out, let's dump this out into a file. So the way you do that on Python is you do with open. Let's name it test.html comma w comma encoding is UTF-8. We need to provide the encoding because sometimes we can think of it, just think of it as sometimes it doesn't play well. Some Unicode characters don't play well with the automatic encoding as file. And then we're going to do file.write text. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to dump the entire HTML that we're getting into this file test.html. And this bit of code will create the test.html file for us, and we'll be able to view it over here. So when we run this, you'll see that we have a new test.html file created. And when we click on this, you'll see that this is indeed an HTML file. Let me format this so that it's easier to see. There we go. So this is indeed the HTML file that was this entire page. So we have the entire page with us, fetched for us to be used. Awesome. But we don't want to use the entire page, right? This is extremely big and extremely not useful for us. We want to get the specific recipes, right? That's what we want to do. And so what we're going to do is somehow we need to figure out a way that we can navigate to each of these recipe pages. Okay, so a quick recap of what we've done. We've figured out how to fetch a website or a web page. And then we have figured out we can dump that entire thing into a HTML file to be able to view it properly. I see a question from Road One saying, how do you format it? So the HTML, I am using a formatter. Visual Studio Code often allows a formatter. You can right click and you can click on Format Document. If you don't have a formatter, it will then prompt you to install a formatter. And it's generally a very big lifesaver. So I like using Prettier. Prettier is really cool for formatting most stuff. Hopefully that answers your question. Awesome. So moving on, what we want to do now is somehow we want to navigate on to each of these recipe files, right? Because remember, our end goal is to be able to get the information on each of this recipe page, right? We want to get that. So we want to essentially navigate to all of these recipe page and be able to get the ingredients and the title and the image. For now, let's just focus on three things: the title, image, and ingredients. That's all that we want to get. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, if you look over here, right? If I hover on the view recipe over here, you'll see on the bottom left. I can't move my cursor, but you can see on the bottom left of the screen it says the URL slash recipes slash a number. There's a number over there. In fact, if I click on this, you'll see that the URL on top has this number in front of it, right? And if we go to another recipe, you'll see that this number has changed. So this number essentially means stands for like an ID for each individual recipe, right? And if we can somehow get that ID for every single one of these recipes, then we'd be able to navigate to every single one of those pages and then get our whatever resource that we want to get. So I'll quickly recap and say what this thought process exactly means. So essentially, let me create a new MD5. And what we want to do is we want to firstly find the IDs for all recipes on the slash recipes page. And then we want to navigate and get information from slash recipes slash ID page. This is the two main things that we want to accomplish today, right? Hopefully this makes sense till here. Okay, so first part, we find the IDs for all recipes on the recipes page. Let's tackle it one at a time. So let's do the first part. How do we do this? Well, if we look back, the way that we figured out, okay, there are different IDs was by hovering on this button for view recipe. And that tells us that it's a URL. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on this little view recipe. And we're going to click on inspect. I'm using Firefox, so the key is Q, but it might be different for you. So when you click on inspect, you'll see the entire HTML page for the website crop up. So you'll see the body, the headers, and everything that you have. And inside of it, because we inspected this particular element, right? You'll see that this particular element is in fact an anchor tag, which has a particular class, and then it has, voila, it has an href. The href is where it links to, right? So in the href, we have a slash recipes slash ID. There we go. Awesome. So if we somehow manage to figure out a way of finding all of these anchor tags on the page, all of these view recipe anchor tags on the page, then we'd be able to get the IDs, and then we'd be able to complete well our first objective of finding all the IDs of the recipes on the recipes page. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense. If there are any questions, let me know in the chat. I hope everything's okay. Um, So again, any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat. I'm definitely monitoring that. Yeah. With that being said, let's move on. So to actually passing through this HTML wall of text that we have. So this is where our second library comes into place, which is Beautiful Soup. So what the response request fetching it from request gave us a response which has the text, and that text is just an incredibly large HTML page, right? And it's incredibly hard for us to take this HTML page and then be able to uh, pass through it manually. We'll be able to find strings and substrings in this manually, and that is where Beautiful Soup comes in. So what Beautiful Soup does is it takes all of that HTML, big chunk of HTML, and it turns it into into a Python object that we can then navigate and use. And that's really easy for us to work with. So the way that we use Beautiful Soup is by just feeding it the entire HTML and then be able to navigate through it and find what search for what we want really quickly. So firstly, we're going to try and implement that logic in. So firstly, we're going to import Beautiful Soup. The way we do that is to from bs4 import Beautiful Soup. There we go. So bs4 is the library and Beautiful Soup is the main class that we're going to be using. And it's in fact incredibly easy to use. So we're going to delete the test.html for now. And all you need to do is you need to do soup, which is just a variable. So soup is a variable, is equal to Beautiful Soup. And then we're going to do res.text. So all we've done is we have passed in the HTML value, the entire HTML value inside of the constructor for this class, right? And so this allows us to make like an entire an object, Python object, that is much easier to navigate than the HTML text that we started with. So if we run this, we see python main.py, you'll see that firstly, we run into a bit of a warning, and we can ignore the warning for now. I'll definitely address this, why this happens. It's a cool comparison why this happens, but we don't seem to be running into any errors, and that means this is working. Solan19 is asking, can you explain more about Beautiful Soup? Solan, can you tell me more about what you want to know? What doesn't make sense about Beautiful Soup? I'll still give a major overview. Okay, so essentially, we used requests to get HTTP request and fetch the HTML on this page, on this recipes page, right? And we have all of that HTML value, right? But it is not easy for us. So this is essentially a big string, right, for Python. What Beautiful Soup does is it takes in that string of HTML and it then converts it into a format that is more easy for us to use. How is it easier for us to use? We'll take a look at that real quick. But it essentially turns that whole string of Python of HTML into an object that is easier for us to use and work with and search and navigate. Does that make more sense? Okay. So while we wait for Solan to answer, we're going to continue on. So what we're doing now is we've just imported Beautiful Soup and we have made a soup, and now we want to see, okay, I'm saying, okay, Yash, you'll say, Yash, we've created soup. You're saying it's easy to navigate. How exactly is it easy to navigate? So the way we can do it is really easy. All you do is soup, which is our main soup, and then dot followed by any tag that you want. So say, for example, I want the title value, right? So I just do soup.title. And when I print this soup.title, when I print this out, you'll see that it returns a tag, which is the title tag, which says unconventional pizza recipes. And indeed, if I go back to my Firefox and I look at the at the title over here, that is exactly what it says, unconventional pizza recipes. That is indeed exactly what it says. So with Beautiful Soup, you're really able to use a lot of it parses the HTML for you, and you're able to use that HTML searching capabilities and navigational capabilities of Beautiful Soup much easier this way. Awesome. So Solan says, cool. I hope that means, okay, so that means we're all good. Awesome. So with Beautiful Soup, what we're going to do is we can get the title, we can get the body, and if you try to get the body, this will be huge because yeah, we're essentially getting the entire uh, HTML. Aside from the headers head, we're just getting the entire thing. If I try to get like the first div, it can do that, or maybe like the first anchor element, you can do that, and it returns the element which is slash home, right? So again, ignore this warning. We are going to address that later on. But this is what it returns. It returns slash home. If we go back, you'll see that indeed the first, if I inspect this home slash home, this is the first anchor tag that you run into, which is the anchor tag to slash home. Awesome. So Beautiful Soup is already making navigation easy for us, but it can get even better. So what we want to do is we want to find all of the anchor tags which look like this, right? Which we can use to get the recipes. So the way we do this is we use a cool little function that Beautiful Soup has, which is soup dot find all. Okay. And inside of this, we provide two parameters. The first is the tag that we want to find. So we want to find an anchor tag, which is an A, right? So this is the tag that we want to find. And if I print this out, right, you'll see that it lists out all of the anchor tags that are present in the, yeah, there you go. So it's printing on all of the anchor tags which are present in our website over here, right? But we don't want all of the anchor tags, right? Because some of those link to like home, some of those link to recipes, so on and so forth. So what we want to do is instead we want to get these specific anchor tags. And the way that we do that is by the second parameter that is present in Beautiful Soup. So if I put a comma, you'll see the attributes highlighted over here. And the attributes is the way that we can search for specific identity markers inside of Beautiful Soup. So I could go attributes is equal to, and then I provide a dictionary. And in this dictionary, I say, okay, the class of this should be equal to some specific class. Okay. So if we go back to our anchor tag over here, right? And we take a look at the class, right? This is the class of our anchor tag. And if you try to search the HTML for other such instances of this class, you'll see that it's mostly on the view recipe page, right? So I click on this, every single view recipe button is highlighted when I use this class. So there is no other anchor tag which uses this all of these classes. And this is sort of a unique identifier for the element that we want to fetch, right? So the class is a unique identifier. You can use stuff like ID, you can use stuff like href, all of this can be used, right? So what we are going to do is we want to fetch all of the attributes, all of the anchor tags, which have the class which matches this. We're going to copy and paste that the class that we just got. Okay, so again, where do we got the class names? We went to our website over here. We right-clicked it, hit inspect, and when we hit inspect, we get the anchor tag. And in that, there is the class that we want to, that is a unique identifier for that anchor tag. And we can copy this over to our code and use that to fetch every single recipe. Awesome. So now that we did this, we'll have a lot of anchor tags, right? So this is going to find all of these anchor tags, all of these anchor tags that link to a recipe page. So let's save this in a variable, store this in a variable called anchor list, right? And once we do this, let's quickly print out, or rather, let's for every anchor in anchor list, we're going to try and print out anchor. Or rather than anchor, we're going to try out print anchor. You know what? Let's just print anchor for now. Let's see what this returns. So what we're doing is we are iterating over all of the attributes, all of the tags that we found that matches this big class over here. And then we are iterating through every single tag available in that class, in that list, and then printing that out. And you can see, indeed, we have all of these different anchor tags with all of the different hrefs over here, which link to different IDs. This is amazing. This is awesome. Okay, so this is working great. We have all of the hrefs which link to different recipes. Now, the only thing that we need to do next is we need some way to get the href value from it. Okay, so what makes logical sense is just like we were able to do soup.a, right? Then we should be able to do anchor.href, right? That makes sense. This should work. So when we run this, you'll see that instead of giving us the href values that the anchor tag leads to, this instead gives us a lot of nuns. And the reason why it does that is because we need, and we can only do, we can only use the syntax for tags. Href is not a tag. Href is a property that the anchor tag has. So the way that we access that property is by using the dictionary syntax, if you're familiar with that. So we're going to use square brackets, and in that we're going to put, okay, I want the href from the anchor tag. And once we do this and try to run this, you'll see, okay, awesome. So we have all of our recipes data and URL and IDs over here. Awesome. So a quick recap of what we've done till now. We've gotten requests, which is a library that makes HTTP requests. We've got Beautiful Soup, which is a library that helps us parse this big chunk of HTML. Then we've gotten the recipes or the entire HTML from the recipes page, fed that into the Beautiful Soup, which has given us a variable that is easy to navigate. Then we have found all of the anchor tags from this easily navigable soup, and all of the anchor tags which match this particular class. And from those anchor tags, we were able to find out their href values, which is where do they link. And that has given us the link to every single individual recipe onto the page. So maybe asks, what can we do with this info? That's a great question, maybe. So we are going to move into that in the next part of the stream. So the second part is to navigate with all of this information, and we're going to try and get all the scrape all of the data inside of each recipe page. So we're going to get to that really quick. Awesome. So are there any questions? I'm going to take this time, a quick pause of like 10-15 seconds for everyone to catch up. If there are any questions, if there are no questions, feel free to put an emoji in the chat, and I'll be happy to continue with that. Let me quickly go back here, see if there are any questions. I don't see any questions. Okay. Yay, we got emojis in the chat. Where did you get the class? Off the wall asks. Okay, so if we head on out into our website over here, right, and we go on the button and we right click on this and click inspect. Well, then you'll see that there is this big class, right? This is this very big text of this like class value over here. What does this do? We don't have to concern ourselves with that. Think of it as something that is unique for this particular element, right? Or this particular family of elements. Okay, all of these family of elements with the anchor tags, all of them have the same class. So we took this, we copy this value, and we use beautiful soup to fetch that family of elements, and that helps us to get to the recipes. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. While off the wall answers, we're going to move on to creating to the next part of the session where we try to go to each individual recipe page, right? Okay, so what I want to do is we have this URL over here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this bit over here. I'm going to make a new constant called URL endpoint. And I'm going to store this value of our base URL inside of this constant. And why we're doing that will make sense in just a second. Then we're going to add this URL endpoint as where it was, so that this whole code works as it is. So we are just concatenating the string to this to the recipes. Next, what we can do is okay. So next, what we are going to do is we're going to go. Okay, awesome. So hopefully everyone's got over here. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go and navigate to every single recipe on this page, and we're going to try and get all of the information from there, right? So we've completed our first to do already, which is find all the IDs for all of the recipes on the recipes page. Now we want to navigate on each of those pages, recipes/ID page, which you see over here. We have recipes/ID, and we want to get the HTML on that page. So that's what we're going to try and do now. So we have this again. We have this list of anchor tags, and we have the href. So what we can do is we want to get the HTML on that particular page, right? So what do we do for that? We use the requests library. So I'm going to make a new variable res, right? Uh, and it doesn't matter, they both can be of the same name in this instance. And I'm going to do request.get. So we have the URL endpoint, which is the base site that we have, right? And then we are going to concatenate it to the anchor href. So we have this href, which are the values over here, and we are just concatenating it to the original website, and that will give us the link to the details page for every single recipe over here. So this will allow us to fetch all the data and just fetch the title, image, and ingredients. That's all we want, right? So we want to be able to get all of this data. And by doing this, by looping through the list and then getting it through requests, we're able to get the HTML page for every single page in that recipes list. So hopefully this makes sense. Now, because once we have the res, let's do a quick check to see if we haven't broken anything. Let's do the res print res just to see we are still getting that 200 code. And there we go. Yeah, we are absolutely getting a 200 code on our response. That means everything is going great. We can continue. So what I'm now going to do is we're just going to repeat the same steps that we did. So we're going to do soup is equal to beautiful soup, and then we're going to feed res.text into this. So this is the recipe. This is the HTML of the recipe, and we're going to feed that into the beautiful soup, create a soup, and we have the soup ready. All of this talk about soup is making me really hungry. If you have any soup recipes, let me know. I'm looking for I've been looking for some soup recipes lately. So if you have any soup recipes, put them in the chat. So we have created our delicious soup of HTML over here. And now what we want to do is, okay, so we want to do three things. The very first of which is we want to get this title over here. How do we get the title over here? Let's quickly inspect and see if there's something from the title that we can like glean, something from the title that we can that is unique to X that we can use. And the very first thing that I notice is like starting from the body, this is the very first H1 element. In fact, I'm not sure if we search for H1, right? I don't think, yeah, there are no more H1. So this is the only H1 element in the entire page, which means that we can just fetch the first H1 that soup finds, and we can just use that for our text. So the way we do this is, if you remember, we covered this during the start of the session, but we do soup dot tag, whatever tag it is that you want to find. And you can do soup.h1 to find the very first h1 element, right? And let's quickly print this to see what it returns. Let me run this Python script once. And when I run this, you'll see, woohoo, there we go. So we're going to that. So everything is coming together now. We're going to that specific recipe page, right? We're going to that specific recipe page for every single recipe, and we are able to get the title tag on every single recipe page. How cool is that? I love it. And so if I want to get rid of all of this weird class stuff, what I'll do is I'll do h1 dot, I think, text, or it might be string. I might have to check. Let's try text. Yeah, text works. So you do h1.text and it returns all of the text values. So we have rustic grilled peaches pizza. I mean, I used to hate pineapple on pizza, but then there's peaches on pizza. There's pizza bite with pumpkin. There's a lot of cursed recipes over here. Okay, so we are able to get all of our titles from the recipes. This is great. This is awesome. So let's quickly store this value inside of a variable, because we can then save it later on, right? So let's make a recipe title variable and store this value inside of it. Okay, awesome. Then all right. We are already quite above time. Let me quickly check if there are any other streams after this, or if there are not. If there are any streams after this, then we might have to hop off. Let me quickly check that. Okay, I see a stream in an hour from now. So I think I'll still try to wrap it up in just 10 minutes. I think we are almost at the end over here. But I'll try to wrap it up as soon as I can. But till then, I think I'm going to have to overextend it by just a bit. Okay, so we have soup. So we've got the title of the soup. Then we are going to get the image, right? So if we inspect the image over here, you'll see that there's an image with a class and a source to that image, right? So next thing that we're going to try and do is we're going to try and fetch this image over. And the way we do that is we can do soup.img, right? This should hopefully fetch the image that we want, and then we use the dictionary syntax to get the property of that tag, and then we can get the source, and then we can print that source out. So when we run this, awesome, you'll see that it's returning both the pizza name and the image of that pizza. So this is great. So we have with us, this is the image of the pizza, and this is the name of the pizza. Amazing. And let's quickly store this inside of asp.img equals soup.h1. Let's quickly store this. Okay, I had a brain fart there, but okay, so we got it. So we're going to store the URL of the image that we just created inside of our variable here. Awesome. And with that, the very last thing that we need to do is we need to get the ingredients over here. Okay. And there's a bunch of ways that we can do this. You can just totally, so what we've been doing for with the anchors was we did soup.find all, and we did the anchor tag and then got the class, right? And that gets all the family of elements that fit that particular class. What we can do, so you're free to do that here as well. If you look at this span here, right, it has a particular class that works for every single, if I copy this and try to search this, right, it works for every single element over here. So it finds all of the ingredients, and that would totally work. But I want to do something else. So what I want to do is sometimes you might have two families of elements that have this exact same class, and there is no other differentiating element to them. So in that case, it might become a bit harder for us to figure out, okay, how do we get only this and not that? And the way you do that is in Beautiful Soup is by navigating up and down. So, so think of it as this way, okay? We have this title ingredients, right? If I inspect this, this is an H2 tag, which says ingredients over here, right? And what I can see is right next to this H2 tag. So a sibling of this H2 tag is a div with the class space y4. And when I hover over this div, you see that all of my ingredients are highlighted. So I want to go to this div, right? And then when I collapse or like open this up and I see that there are sub divs inside of every single one of this div. And okay, so let me quickly rephrase what I mean to say. We can use this H2, which says ingredients, as a starting point. And then we can navigate up, down, or sideways inside of our soup tree to then slowly go on and find all of the ingredients inside of that div. And because ingredients is a very, so having an H2 tag that says ingredients um, is a very surefire and like unique way, unique tag inside of the entire HTML. So you won't find another H2 tag which has the ingredients as a string value inside of this entire thing. So by using that, you can still differentiate between two very similar elements, and you can go through them and fetch them in Beautiful Soup. That might have made a little less sense, I think. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and apply this in real life, in real life as in our code. I'm sorry, I got distracted by this awesome comment here, which says irony soup is screaming soup. I don't really get that message. Could you? This is probably a joke that is obvious and I'm missing it. But could you explain the joke to me? Or if it's not a joke, could you explain the message to me? I'd love to know what you mean. Okay, so continuing on, we're going to take the H2 tag, right? And we're going to try and find this H2 tag over here, and then we're going to navigate through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take H2. I'm going to try and find this H2 tag over here in my souk. So how do we do that? You might remember this. So we do souk.find. So we used find all before. This time we're using find because we only need to find one element, which is this H2, right? And then we're going to find the class, um, this particular class, and we can save this as in a variable. So let's call it ingredients header, right? And once we do this and try to say like, let's print this out. Let's print this out to see what this returns. And you'll see over here, so this returns the exact H2 class that we wanted, which is this ingredients title over here in the pizza site page, right? And we can take this ingredients header and we can sort of navigate this up and down. So the very first thing that we want to do is we want to navigate sideways, because you'll see these both are children of a single parent, right? So we want to find the next sibling of this H2 tag. And the way we do that in Beautiful Soup is we do something called dot next sibling. Okay, and this will end up on this div right here. Okay, so this will end up on this div, and then we want to essentially find every single. So we are on this div. We want to find every single span element with this class inside of that div. So we do find all. We're gonna do this this span, and inside of the attributes we're gonna do class and the class that we wanted to find. Okay, and this is going to be return a list of all of the ingredients values that we wanted. So essentially, if I store this entire thing in a variable, I'll call it ingredients, and I store this entire thing in a variable, and I try and print out what this ingredients value would be. And just for viewing sake, I'm gonna break this after just one recipe. So we're just going to try and see what the ingredients value is returned for a single recipe. When we run this, ooh, okay, I forgot to do the print. Okay, let's print it out. Print ingredients. When I run this, you'll see that it does indeed return a span which has all of the recipe ingredients inside of it. This is awesome. Um, you'll see that it still returns like the entire thing. It has the entire tag itself. So what we'll do is we'll try to print instead of the span. We'll iterate through every single value in the span and try to print out this text behind it. So essentially what we're doing is we're going to iterate through this entire list of ingredients. So for ingredients in ingredients, we're going to be printing out ingredient dot text. And this should hopefully give us there we go. So this is giving us the ingredient value for our recipe. So this bit of code is working now. All we need to do is we need to store this entire thing in a list of so that we can access it later on. So I'm going to create a new variable here called recipe ingredients. This would be an empty list, and we're going to loop over through this list of ingredients, and we're going to store that ingredient value inside of recipe of our main ingredients list. Okay, awesome. So with that being done, hopefully our code should be almost done. So we have ingredients. Let's quickly check. We checked our ingredients are working. We have our image being stored, image value, and our title being stored. The very last thing that we need to do is this loops over, and the second time that it loops over, all of our original values are overwritten, right? So let's make a final dictionary over here, call it recipes. This would be an empty dictionary. And let's try to store the value. So we're gonna store recipes. the value that we just scraped. So we're going to store it inside of the recipes dictionary over here. So we're going to store it inside of recipes. How do we do that? What would be an ID? We can just use the anchor URL for the ID. So we could do anchor href, and then we could store the value. So we could say name would be recipe name, recipe title. Then there would be image, which is recipe image. And finally, ingredients, which are recipe ingredients. Okay. And hopefully, after writing all of this, when we try to print out this big dictionary that we have of recipes, we would have a complete data set of all of the recipes on that website that we created. So when we run this, there we go. There we have a complete. Let me quickly copy and paste this so that it's easier to view. Let's copy this, create a new JSON file, rest.json. And when I copy and paste this, quickly format this, you'll see that we have a usable data to be used. So we have our recipe ID, our URL over here, the name, the image, and the ingredients that we use inside of our web scraper. So there we go. We have a working web scraper that's able to scrape the URL, the name, the image, and the ingredients from our recipe page. Hopefully this made sense. So I did want to leave you with one final treat it as practice, homework, whatever you want to take it as. But you can try and build an extension to this web scraper on your own, which scrapes the instructions on this website. So we just have the ingredients. We want the instructions on this website as well. So if you do that, ping me in the Discord of MLH at 404 not found. Ping me there and show me the code that you used to build that website. That was amazing. Okay. So Raj asks, can I show you the code once again and give the summary of the entire code? For sure. This is the code. So what I'll do is I will post this on GitHub, and I'll ask someone to post this in the Discord as well, so that you can access the entire code. What we've done as a quick summary is we have taken requests. Okay, I'm going to address a question before we take the summary. Somebody asks, what was that warning? That's a very good call. I completely forgot to talk about what the warning was. So if I quickly do that, you'll see that what Beautiful Soup is yelling at is guessing at parser warning, which means no parser was explicitly specified. So it's using the best available HTML parser for the system, which is html.parser. What Beautiful Soup is essentially saying is that it uses a specific parser for you to parse the HTML on the text to HTML and the HTML text into the Python that we use. And it uses the default parser on the system, which is html.parser. This is the parser that Python has by default, and it's slow. I will generally recommend using this. And so on different machines, the same code might lead to different behaviors, different responses. And the way that you can get rid of this warning is by using the parser that Beautiful Soup itself recommends. And that parser is LXML. So that parser is LXML. And the way you install it is you do pip install LXML, right? By doing that, you're able to install that XML parser, which uses C under the hood, I think. So it's much faster. And then whenever you're doing the Beautiful Soup, you just do you just tell it to use LXML. We have LXML from available. Please use LXML, and that will get rid of the warning for us. So when we add those two and the parameters, then our warning would vanishes. So if I run python main.py again, you'll see that we run into no more warnings anymore. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, awesome. So a quick summary of the code. What we've done, we have a website that we want to fetch. And so we're using requests to fetch the website HTML. And then we are taking that HTML, feeding that into Beautiful Soup, which makes it easier for us to parse and navigate. We are then finding all of the anchor tags, which we're finding all of the anchor tags inside of this soup, which specify this particular attribute. So we are trying to find all of the anchor tags which have the class value equal to this. And that helps us find the particular anchor tag that we want. From those anchor tags, we are able to figure out IDs or URLs to each specific individual recipe. So this gives us a list of all of the recipes, and then we loop through all of those recipes, use request and soup again to get all of the information on that page, get the title by the h1 tag, get the image by the img tag, and then we use navigation to get the ingredients, every single ingredients with soup. And finally, we store all of that data that we collected inside of a big dictionary that you can then dump out into JSON. So hopefully that answers your question. I do think we are much over time now. So if there are any more questions, I would highly recommend pinging me in Discord at 404 not found, or you can just ask anyone in the community. Is extremely helpful. And you can ping me in Discord, and I'll be happy to answer any more questions that you have. And yeah, that is it. So congratulations on building, probably if this is your first time on building your own web scraper. This was awesome to have.
Super. That was so cool, Yash. Thank you for streaming for us. Another awesome workshop, and I hope everyone's enjoyed it as much as I have. That's been super fun. So much learning. Beautiful soup is so cool. Those pizzas, pretty cursed pizzas.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's get some huge thank yous in the chat for Yash. And as always, if you'd like to give some feedback, I know that's always appreciated. I'm going to pop the link down in chat. So feel free to fill that out and let Yash know what you thought. We love having Yash here, so please let us know. We've got so many thank yous. Happy hackers. This is really awesome to see. So with that, I think we'll wrap up. The next stream to head along to, I think maybe you know better than me, Yash. I think you checked it out, didn't you? Let me find it.
I think anything. It's yep.
Oh, I don't know who's running that, but it sounds really cool. So if you want to learn about automation, now is your chance. That will be in I don't know, about half an hour, I think. Yeah, about half an hour. So head along to that for sure. There we go. Way to the rescue. Here's the check-in link if you want to do that. Definitely head along. And yeah, huge thank you for coming, everyone. Thank you, Yash, for streaming. And with that, we will say goodbye.